We'd like to welcome everybody today to our next edition of Wavestone Insights. And today's exciting topic is going to be navigating the dynamic world of identity and access management. And our topical overview for today, we're going to hit four main topics that we wanted to share with the audience. First of all, navigating IAM integration complexity. Second of all, enhancing cross-departmental collaboration with respect to IAM, adopting and adapting the target operating model to compliance and complying with strategic shifts in what's happening out in the marketplace, which is really, really key. And then finally, the role and big impact of centralizing identity and access management governance. So those are the main topics for us today, and we'll plan to cover these in the next 20 to 25 minutes. But without further ado, I wanted to introduce our two esteemed panelists that we have from different sides of the globe. First of all, welcome to Jigar, who is based in Chicago. He's currently with Tenet Healthcare and the role of Head of Identity and Access Management. From a degree perspective, he's what we call a triple threat. He's got an engineering degree, an MBA, and a law degree. Oh my goodness. We're excited that you can be here with us today and look forward to your participation in our video podcast. We also have Bertrand Collier, who is a senior manager with cyber practice in Wavestone with over 20 years of experience. He's also currently a board member of ID Pro. He's based in our office in Paris. Thank you for taking time late your afternoon to join us for today's video podcast. And he's been leading identity and access management projects for many, many, many years and has really been dedicated to open standards and loves to tackle new issues, challenges, and problems in the identity and access management space. I look forward to your participation too. So why don't we go ahead and jump in and get started with our conversation today? And that is, IAM integration is extremely complex, regardless of which organization or ecosystem we're talking about. And, how does this actually necessitate a really robust target operating model? And what are some of the best practices for sort of managing this integration across an organization, whether it's a public organization or private organization? Jigar, why don't we start with you and get some of your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on this. And it's an honor and pleasure to be with such distinguished gentlemen. As we talk about IAM, right? I always tell people that cybersecurity game is about to change. Now it's all about data breach and connecting that directly with an identity. So identity first, security is taking the center and the front end seat in every organization. As we talk about the complexities, I feel that identity is now not only just becoming out there, but it's also solving, or it's also the cornerstone of the business. When we talk about the business in the real sense. So without access, nothing moves. So it's not only a technical or a cybersecurity function, but it's a true business function. So how does it work? Now it's not only just about human identities, we're also talking about non-human identities and the whole ecosystem surrounding it. We are into that world where our identity is defined by so many factors. And how do we protect that? How do we safeguard that? And how do we navigate that complexity to really get to the target operating model? So in my experience, what I have figured is there are so many things going to come, but as long as you make your basics and foundation strong, you will be able to navigate through this complexity. So it's rightly said that, identity can be easy, but not easy. Identity can be difficult. It is difficult, right? So the whole point is how well you have your operating model. So let's talk about what the operating model looks like, right? In general sense, the operating models are, if you have the right process, technology, people, and then on top of this, do you have the right culture, the right success criteria, the right buy-in? All that comes as your operating model. In this case, when you have to really define identity target operating model, integration is the key. When we talk about identity in terms of just access management function, how well it is integrated with your incident response or your SOC, right? How well it is integrated with all your business and critical applications, with your infrastructure or your applications, right? Those integrations matter. And that ecosystem is really important. When you find something suspicious, you come back and make sure that, hey, where this is coming from. And I feel that, that linkage is super important in terms of interaction. At the end of the day, when you have the right people, the right stakeholders from different departments, cross-functional leaders, your IT team, your HR, your finance, your operations, your business, your legal, your compliance, all coming together with the right RACI metrics, right roles and responsibilities, so that they understand what is their role into this whole identity access management function. It is not a siloed function. It cuts across every department, every discipline in the company. And that, if it is not clear, your identity program will not be successful, whether you go to a small company or a large company. That is the cornerstone. Bertrand, any thoughts from you?
Well, I think that's a wrap. You said so much interesting, and I'm 100% with you, Jigar, on so many topics that you touched on. So first, thank you, John, for the introduction, and I'm happy to be here today as well. Jigar, you touched on a lot of truth, and my vision of the IAM complexity, the integration that we have to make with so many stakeholders is really aligned with what you said. So IAM is a technical topic, that's for sure. I've been doing IAM for 20 years, and I love the technical bits, and we do need those technical experts to tackle the most intricate challenges that we have. But at the same time, it's not technical. You have to understand who you're going to provide identity for. You're going to provide identities for the business, for the customer experience. You're going to have to integrate, like you said very well, with the SOC team in order to provide all the tools that everyone in the company needs. And identity is a foundational topic that you have to prepare for everyone there. That's why the integration is complex. You have so many people to talk to, and you cannot have one single person being able to tackle everything, being an expert of all those topics. So you definitely have to organize yourself. You definitely have to define who's going to tackle the technical bits, who's going to tackle the business processes, to discuss with the business strategy, because the business processes are about the HR, the employee experience, compliance, risk management. But the business strategy of the company is very important also to align with. You have all those topics to address. You have to put the right people in charge of all those topics, and you have to bring a coherent answer to this. And the operating model has to be well defined with who's doing what, who is responsible for what. I would say share the burden of identity, or share the magic of identity between the technical experts, the process knowers, the business owners, etc. But I really loved the way you said it, Jigar. It was really nice to involve all the teams that you're going to integrate with in the end.
Absolutely. I would like to add one of the things which I think every company, when they start their identity journey, one of the first thing I always tell is understand what your end state looks like. Number one, who are your people? As you rightly mentioned, Bertrand, identities are so many. It could be your employees, your contractors, your third parties, your non-service, non-human accounts. There's so many constituencies of identities. But at the end of the day, what are you trying to solve? What is that whole business value stream that you can create with that identity? Once you have that in mind, then you reverse engineer and come back to your main strategy. What's your gap assessment? And then you begin your roadmap and your target operating model. That will give you a lot of cushion to see, hey, this is what I want to go, and this is where I am, and this is what my vision and strategy looks like. Now, do I have the right players in place? It's basically a game of chess. Once you understand that this is what I want to do, you want to put your best people into best boxes so that you understand that, hey, this is the strength and this is how I really want to operate. John, you mentioned it's a complex topic. It's not easy. Once you start boiling the ocean, you yourself will be so complicated in your own ecosystem and web that you won't be able to unpack. So I always tell people simplicity is the key. Do not do a big bang approach, deliver in an incremental value.
Bite-sized chunks, I always say.
Exactly, right. You cannot do that no matter how good you are. It's just the way the technology and the business is. You do it in an incremental value, give a good result, and then try to evolve as you go.
So let me ask a question to both of you that is interesting. It's an offshoot of this part of the conversation. And by the way, I love, Bertrand, a couple minutes ago, how you mentioned the magic of IAM, because it truly is a great descriptor word to use. So for people like you guys, you both are absolutely focused on this. And organizations all have people that this is their job, their day job, if you will. And I guess I wanted to talk about the importance of the complexity and getting this out into the entire organization and ecosystem. How do you get that non-IT technical person to understand the complexity, the importance, and what their role is? But more importantly, how do you get everybody else? Because everybody's got a role in this. But how do you make it important to the people that are out there doing other enabling support functions that are not technical? How do you get them excited about it? And more importantly, how do you retain and keep that excitement so that they stay diligent about things like this?
Well, I would say it depends on who you're actually going to ask that question or to have this discussion. If you're going to ask the people that benefit from identity, you have to see them as your customers. They're the clients of the IAM product. So you have to speak their language. You have to understand them rather than they have to understand the magic of identity. So you really have to set yourself in their shoes and try to understand their requirements, what they aim for, and what you can do to help them. And that's really the logic of having identity as the foundation of so many other things in the company. Then when we're talking about the people that are working in the identity, or they are stepping into this, and I did that myself 20 years ago, and I never left the field because I enjoyed the magic of identity. It's when you realize that you're going to put in place a solution that will infuse the whole company. Like the first time I pushing that button to switch on that identity and governance solution, and I saw all those identities moving from one repository to another. It was like seeing the information system brought to life. And sometimes that image triggers the young people that I work with at Wavestone, or that are new to the identity field. And I try to communicate my passion about this. Maybe that's a way to do that. I don't know, Jigar, how you feel about this.
Absolutely. I would also add, John, what Bertrand said, the magic of identity. I would say now it's the impact of identity, even beyond that, right? It's so impactful. And Bertrand, what you mentioned, to keep everyone excited, not just your own identity team, but everyone, including or your end users, right? And how you can do that is the one thing which you have to tell them that what we are doing is we are enabling you to run your business. We are enabling you to have your needs. Once you create that line of sight, that's where the end game is. And that is so important in our business to really prove that. For example, Bertrand, you said it's a technology, right? It's complex. But if I'm talking to a non-techie person, how am I going to say that use this authorization or use this authentication? It's Greek and Latin to them. But if I really tell them that if I give you the access, you'll be able to do X, Y, Z, translating that into a business, plain English, that is the key to really get them excited. The other day, I was just telling that the cybersecurity game is changing. More and more identity leaders are drafted into the breach detection and response. And I think Gartner has forecasted that in 2026, there will be a new wave where the whole identity, the whole data, the insider risk, as well as the data governance will be a part of your identity security practice. So the lines are merging, it's converging. And at the same time, there is also another trend which is coming up, which is your decentralized identity. Now, people, due to your privacy and compliance, more and more folks are very cognizant about the fact that how can I protect my own identity and data rather than someone else or an IDP protecting it. So there's a lot of churn happening. And even if you really see John and Bertrand, in the IAM vendor space, there's a lot of convergence happening, right? There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions happening. More and more people are now trying to make it more simpler rather than managing like 5-6 technologies, how I can just manage one or two to bring that the target operating model, to gain that operational efficiency, the process optimization. At the same time, I'm getting the best ROI of what I'm deploying. And I think that's the key. And once you do that within your own team, and I always tell people, IAM is a thankless job. People are not going to remember the 99 good things you do, but one act.
They're going to remember the day that there's a problem, of
That's
course.
right.
Exactly. Right.
Even if it's not your fault, it's going to be blame on the IAM tool anyway. I know that feeling. Okay, we're from the same experience.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think in today's technology world, just in the world in general, no matter what organization you're with, all these things have just really become table stakes. And what it is people just expect it to work. It's like when you get in your car, you expect to turn it on and it's going to go. And it's only when something doesn't go right, that's when, oh my goodness, you sort of think twice. But otherwise, just mentally, you're just thinking, of course, when I log onto my computers, I'm going to be safe. Everything's okay. Someone's watching out for me. And I think you all have made it really clear and underscored that it's important at the end of the day for people to realize that they too have a very important role individually. The end users have an important role in terms of taking care of security as well. It's not just a corporate function or a group of people where this is their day job. So we talked a little bit about getting everybody involved and keeping them excited about these things. Have you all noticed when you're talking about different departments inside of organizations? So there's all sorts of functions. There's finance, marketing, operational people, and legal, and HR, sales, you name it. That there are any isms sort of associated with working with one group of people versus another? Do you have to custom tailor it down to a departmental level to get that department excited and, more importantly, keep them excited about the importance of this topic? Or is it pretty much across the board, just interdepartmental cooperation, no matter which department, or does some of them need extra care and feeding?
No, I think definitely some departments are different from others. You know, when you're doing identity and access manager, of course, the CISO is one of your major customer of the platform, but the HR, they're really interested in maximizing the workforce experience. They want the employees, they want the contractors to be able to enjoy the way they get access to the workplace people, the end user support. They want to make sure that the user can actually do the job. You can also name, I don't know, marketing, because if we're talking about customer identities, that marketing is and customer experience people are going to chime in. So you have to collaborate with them, and they have very different views, very different requirements. They're going to have a totally different language, and you will have to address that differently. So you really have to understand them. They have different needs, and you're going to provide them a service, and you need the best service there is. That's it.
No, that's an excellent point.
I agree. To add to what Bertrand said is, I mean, everyone needs care in a different way. Everyone needs to be loved, made sure that, their voice is heard. And I think what has really worked for me is the more you bring them into your journey, the more they're vested and they're more into the process. That's super important. Some of them will be very tough. You'll get the pushbacks. People don't want to change their legacy systems. And I'll say in general, including me, people are lazy. They don't want to change because they are so much into their comfort zone. But IAM pushes their boundaries to change, especially with the new modern identity management program, what we are putting in. So in order to do that, you first need to tell them that your voice is very, very critical in my decision making. If that is made clear to them, then they will see themselves to be that irreplaceable cog in that intricate machinery of IAM framework. And when you make them realize that, that's where they will start collaborating rather than pushing back. I don't know the audience, but if people are listening to this, right? And if they are the IAM leaders or the executive leaders in their company, one of the big things, what our job is to create that partnership with your peers, with your stakeholders, with your end users. That is half of the game won there. If you have the right partnership, the right support you get, not only in just terms of technology implementation, but in terms of risks, in terms of budget, in terms of your end user experience. And I think that is super important.
I think it's interesting. One of the other things that's more and more prevalent today than it was, for example, 10 or 15 years ago, is every organization would worry about things like this just within their own ecosystem. But nowadays, we're in a very connected world. And at the end of the day, what that means is there's not just what I call internal compliance with things like IAM policy and whatnot, but in order for you to effectively attract, retain, and do business with anybody else, whether it's end customers or providers that you work with to provide goods and services to your organization, compliance has really moved front and center. And I guess my question is, that's an evolving topic. And how do you stay on top of that? How do you communicate that internally and externally as well, that our organization is indeed compliant, so it's safe to do business with us? It's almost like a good housekeeping seal of approval, because compliance is important and you have to comply. But the ability to articulate that you're compliant and that you don't just get to compliance, you go above and beyond that, I think is really, really key in terms of an organization differentiating itself from the rest of the pack.
Absolutely. So, John, I think last week I was reading an article, and one thing which really struck me was, it was really rightly said, compliance is not security. Compliance is maturity.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, and that really resonated with me. When we see that the compliance and legal is coming, it is coming, right? If you see really in Europe, GDPR, here we have CCPA, and not only that, privacy is now taking over every individual. People are becoming more self-aware. They are looking where their data is going. With all this Gen AI, Chat GPT, there's so much of complexity in compliance in the legal world, which dictates how you want to evolve as your identity program going forward. And one of the things which I feel that compliance is evolving, so are we as humans. And forget about all the laws. At the end of the day, imagine in the world without an identity access management, where everyone has access to each other's data, personal data. And imagine there is a threat attacker who is actually moving freely. Then the trust is hanging on that fragile thread where we don't know when this thread is going to break. And that's what I think IAM comes as a beacon of hope to all of us. And that's what I feel that identity access management becomes so important, that it not only just makes sure that your business are run, but at the same time, your business are run ethically and to what it should run. I think compliance and security are important, but at the end of the day, you really have to see from a 30,000 feet view, what is it that overall game is changing? Is it a business-wise law? And that should dictate your whole program, identity access management.
No, I think so too. And it's interesting that you mention these things, because it leaves an impression on all of us, especially when something goes wrong. Here in the US, a very large telecom company announced in the last couple of days that there was a giant data breach. And I didn't just read about it on the news. I actually got an email that said, I personally have been impacted. Mm-hmm. That told me sort of what data elements. I said, not financial information and not information about the calls I made or anything, but other stuff like social security number, my date of birth, the things that anybody could use to open up a credit account. So of course I immediately put fraud alerts out there. But what it makes you question is, what is that company doing? Hopefully they're doing everything they can, and sometimes it's outside of their control. And I'm sure they have lots and lots of people that are focused on this, as every company does. But it makes you really think, how did this happen? And then more importantly, could it happen to my organization and impact my customers? I think that that's a really important thing to think about, is the last thing anybody wants is to have their name plastered across, virtual as it may be, the Wall Street Journal that says there's been a giant data breach impacting 75 million people and their social security numbers or something like that, because that's not good PR. So, I mean, think about that, right?
Yeah, it's not good PR. And you may not have heard of a breach in France about the healthcare providers with dozens of millions of users, private information, including the social security numbers, also being leaked. That's really harmful. And Jigar, coming back to your point to being ethical, I really like this vision, and I really like that we don't only focus on security and compliance, but we have a high-level view. And I guess I started realizing this when a few years back, when GDPR was introduced and maybe leading the way in the privacy laws that we now see everywhere in the world, that there was a question about data minimization. Just don't hold as many data as you can. Don't get that data in the first place. You don't need it. You don't know how to use it for now. Data minimization is really important. And then when you have a long thought about it, maybe some data is interesting. Maybe you should ask for consent. Maybe you should process that in an ethical way. And really that's a game changer. And I think it's really happening. I see now organizations, they know that personal data is like toxic waste. They don't want to handle this if they don't have to. So they only now understand, and it's a good thing, they only now understand that they only need some data and not the rest. And the business owners understand that, and that's good. I think we have made a lot of progress around these past few years.
Yeah, I agree. I think I remember Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan until they are punched in their face. And, and that's what as leaders, we have to really make sure that we are proactive in the plan. At the same time, we are paying attention to this changing laws, changing dynamics. Data is, as Bertrand, you mentioned, is the king these days. How do we make sure that the data is protected? And now, John and Bertrand, there is a new concept coming up. What has access to what? Who has access to what? What has access to what? And the whole culture shift has changed. It's happening. The mindset is changing. Now, identity is not just running as identity for security or identity as a service, but now I'm seeing there is an identity operations, ID ops, access ops. Those are the new functions which are emerging so quickly that we talked about DevSecOps in the last couple of years. Now, even more than that, it's about the identity ops. It's about access ops. And those functions are emerging so quickly in the organization because more and more people are seeing that identity is becoming the center of everything. You're connecting everyone. So you see where the change is happening. The whole industry is changing. So,
no, I think so too. So it's interesting that you bring that up. In fact, that's a good segue into our final question for you both. We've talked about the importance of identity and access management. We've talked about getting people on board in the organization, even if it's not their day job, how different departments may require a little bit different care in terms of what needs to be done to work with them inside of an organization. But now let's talk about the leadership and sort of leadership of identity and access management. One of the things that we've seen over the last couple of years is the emergence of all these cool new jobs and titles out there like Chief Identity Officer. I mean, what a great title, right? And are you all seeing this? Is this prevalent here in the US and across the pond in Europe? And, is this a way for organizations, again, to keep this front and center in front of their organization and make it part of their differentiation that we take identity and access management very seriously? So what are your thoughts? Who leads these functions inside these organizations?
Well, I think the term is very interesting. It says a lot. And I think it probably was coined by Gartner. A lot of organizations will have a chief identity officer by 2026, 2027. The point is not the numbers, it is not the year. It's really happening. Identity is touching on so many functions and departments in the enterprise that it needs a high level of sponsorship. And you cannot rely on having only the CISO or only the HR director as your sponsor. You have to be yourself, close to the board. You have to be able to be strong, to get your budget, to get identity strategy needs to be aligned to the business strategy. And for that, you need to make your case to the highest level of the company. And that's why we see more and more the head of IAM or the chief identity officer or whatever the title. But it's true that chief identity officer is quite fancy. I like it. We see that this person needs access to the board. He needs access to the company strategy because he's going to be a real part of it and an enabler of this strategy. And I think that's where the shift is coming from, a security topic anymore. It's much more than that, and companies acknowledge that now.
I absolutely agree with you. It's part of the DNA of an organization. Of course it is, but optically, organizations have realized the importance of telling that as part of their story, no matter what business you're in, how important this is. I mean, Jigar, are you all seeing that in healthcare as well? I'm sure you are. But
absolutely. I think it's the time to put our game faces on. That's what I would say, right? Identity is gaining more and more power. Our voices are being heard. Every decision, what we make, affects the bottom and the front line of a business operation. It affects the end user directly. And that's why identity is now becoming a main business problem rather than being a technology or a cybersecurity problem. So, John, interesting title. And I've also seen title like CIAO, like CIO, the Chief Identity Access Officers coming, emerging. At the end of the day, I think the voice is becoming more and more powerful.
They have a seat at the table.
Yes. And as I said, even if it is a breach or something, identity folks are being involved. Their feedback is being asked. They are being drafted into the detection response process. And that's huge. When you see that there's always been a chatter that should it come under cybersecurity or IT, I think identity now needs its own identity. It's getting its seat at the table where Bertrand, you mentioned at the board, directly reporting either into the CEO or into the COO, depending on what kind of culture and function you have in your business. But at the end of the day, that function is becoming more and more independent and more powerful. So I feel that, that is coming, John. It's just a matter of, a couple of years ago, we never had a title called CISO. It was all under infrastructure and application development. And now we have a CISO title. I don't see this, maybe even this year, I'll see some positions opening up stating we are looking for a chief identity access officers. And I think
I think it's a sign of a forward-thinking organization. It's a sign that the organization optically wants to tell the world, we know how important this is. So guys, this has been a great conversation and there's been some incredible nuggets. Bertrand, I love when you described IAM as the magic of IAM. And we talked about compliance. Jigar, when you talked about compliance is maturity. Those are great nuggets for people to take away. In closing, I wanted to see if either one of you had any sort of final thoughts you wanted to leave our audience.
I would just say to all the leaders and the passionate folks about identity, thank you, what you do. It's a very complex role which you all are in. Keep doing this, be bold, be fearless, be objective, and make sure that you translate your identity program and strategy into business so that your end users understand your vision and strategy to the clarity and in a simple way. Try to simplify that.
That's great advice. Bertrand, how about you?
Yeah. Well, I would say to people stumbling into the identity space to know that they're not alone. Every company has identity and they need to reach out to one another. There are great communities available online now, be it on LinkedIn or the ID Pro organization. Some people have tried things, they failed. Some people have tried other things and they succeeded, and exchanging about those experiences is a very good way to do your job. It's a very good way to contribute and to get great ideas to do your job. So that's what I would like to say to people listening and watching us today.
No, that's great. That's great. Very sage words of advice. I wanted to thank both of you for taking the time today to
Thank you, John.
be our esteemed guest on the video podcast. Thank you so very much. And we look forward to talking with you both again soon. Thanks and have a great day.